Alara had never thought life would be this hard. She was only 24, yet life had already tested her more than most people twice her age. Her father had passed away early, her mother was sick, and her younger siblings depended on her completely. To keep food on the table, Alara worked 2 jobs, one at a small diner during the evenings, and another as a part-time caregiver for the elderly in a private nursing home. It wasn't glamour, it wasn't easy, but Alara believed in something most people had forgotten: dignity in work and honesty in effort. One rainy night, when she was called for an urgent shift at the nursing home, she met someone who would unknowingly change her life forever: an elderly woman named Madame Isolde. Isolde was frail, weak, and often mistreated by impatient staff who thought her old age made her difficult. But Alara didn't see just a patient. She saw a soul who needed kindness. Alara sat by Isolde's bed, gently tucking her in and humming softly as she fed her soup with patience. The old woman's eyes, tired and lonely, softened for the first time in days. Alara didn't rush, didn't complain. She held Isolde's trembling hand and said, "You remind me of my mother. You deserve respect, not pity." What Alara didn't know was that behind the half-open door, Cale, Isolde's only son, stood watching. Cale wasn't just an ordinary man. He was the CEO of one of the biggest companies in the city. But tonight, he wasn't a powerful businessman. He was a worried son who had come quietly to see if his mother was receiving the care she deserved. And what he saw shook him to the core. He had hired expensive professionals, yet none had shown this level of compassion. It wasn't money or duty driving Alara. It was pure humanity. For the first time in years, Cale felt something stir inside him. He whispered to himself, "Who is this girl?" The morning sun filtered weakly through the hospital blinds as Alara entered Madame Isolde's room with fresh flowers wrapped in simple brown paper. She looked tired, her eyes heavy from the long night, but her spirit carried the same quiet strength. She smiled softly as she placed the flowers in a glass jar by the bedside. She turned and froze. A man was sitting in the chair beside the elderly woman. His presence was commanding, like someone who was used to rooms pausing when he walked in. He was tall, dressed in a dark tailored suit that seemed too polished for the dull hospital corridors. His eyes, sharp, piercing, yet unreadable, were fixed on her. Alara's fingers tightened around the paper of the bouquet. For a moment, she thought she had walked into a private family moment, and guilt washed over her. I'm sorry," she whispered. "I didn't mean to disturb." The man stood slowly, his height making her feel even smaller. "You're the one from last night," he said. His voice was low but firm, the kind of voice that belonged to someone used to being obeyed. Alara's heartbeat quickened. She lowered her gaze, unsure of what he meant. "You stayed with my mother when the others didn't," he continued. "You fed her, you spoke to her, you sat by her bed as though she were your own family." Alara looked at Madame Isolde, who was now quietly watching the exchange, her lips curving in a faint smile. "I just did what anyone should," Alara replied softly. "She deserves care. She deserves dignity." The man tilted his head, studying her as though she were a puzzle. Unlike most people who worked in this place, she wasn't rushing, wasn't looking at the clock. Her hands were steady, her tone sincere. "What's your name?" he asked. "Alara," she replied. Her voice trembled slightly, but she held her ground. He repeated it under his breath, as though testing the sound of it. "Alara." Then, straightening, he extended his hand. "I'm Cale. Isolde is my mother." Alara hesitated before shaking his hand. His grip was firm, his palm warm, but she could feel the weight of authority behind it. Cale's eyes softened briefly as he looked at his mother, then turned back to Alara. "You've done more for her in a few hours than people I've paid heavily for in months." His tone was almost bitter. Do you always care this way? Alara blinked at the question. I don't know any other way, she answered honestly. Everyone deserves kindness, especially when they're weak. Kale's expression shifted. Surprise, curiosity, something unreadable flickering in his eyes. For a moment, the powerful CEO wasn't standing there. Instead, he was a son humbled by a stranger's compassion. He crossed his arms and leaned slightly toward her. I have an offer for you. Alara stiffened. An offer? Yes, Kale said firmly. Not here. Not just as a caregiver. I want you to work for me, at my company. You'll start small, but I want to see how far your honesty and dedication can go. Alara stared at him, stunned. Your company? I'm the CEO of Arclight Enterprises, he said matter-of-factly, as if it were no more important than stating the weather. Her heart raced. She had heard of Arclight Enterprises. It was one of the largest corporations in the city. She struggled to find words. Why would you offer me that? You don't even know me. Kale's gaze deepened. Last night, I saw more character in you than I see in boardrooms filled with polished men and women, and I trust my instincts. Alara shook her head slightly, overwhelmed. I don't take pity, Mr. Kale. If this is charity, I can't accept it. I have to earn my place. For the first time in a long while, Kale's lips curved into a genuine smile. Not the polite, rehearsed kind he gave at business galas, but something real. Good. Then prove yourself. He slipped his hands into his pockets and walked toward the door, pausing only once to glance back. His mother was still watching, her frail fingers brushing over Alara's hand. As he left, Madame Massold whispered in a voice so soft it almost disappeared into the hum of the machines. Child, you may not realize it, but you've just stepped into something greater than you imagine. Alara swallowed hard, unsure what to make of the moment. She thought it was just another day of work, another day of survival. But destiny had already begun weaving its threads, binding her future to a man whose world was entirely different from hers. The towering glass building of Arclight Enterprises gleamed under the morning sun, its polished surface reflecting the endless sky. For Alara, it felt like walking into another world, a world she had only ever seen from a distance, never imagining she might belong inside. Clutching her small handbag tightly, she pushed through the rotating doors. The lobby was vast, marble floors shining, employees in expensive suits moving briskly with purpose. Alara felt small, like a shadow in a city of giants. Her dress was plain, her shoes worn, yet her eyes carried something rare, determination. At the reception, she introduced herself nervously. Within minutes, she was guided to the administrative department, where Kale had arranged for her to begin as a junior assistant. The pay was more than she had ever dreamed of, but it wasn't the money that made her nervous. It was the weight of expectation. On her first day, Kale deliberately avoided meeting her. From his office on the top floor, however, he watched. He had instructed his managers not to treat her with favoritism. If Alara was truly as honest as she seemed, she would prove herself without special treatment. And she did. Within hours, Alara noticed what others ignored. A fellow assistant dropped important documents by mistake. Alara quietly picked them up and returned them. When the copier jammed and others complained, she rolled up her sleeves and fixed it, earning small smiles from staff who rarely saw kindness in their cutthroat world. But Kale wanted to be certain. That afternoon, he arranged her first test. As Alara was leaving for lunch, a man approached her in the corridor. He was sharply dressed, carrying a leather briefcase. You must be new, he said warmly. I work under Mr. Kale too. He asked me to give you this. He handed her a sealed envelope. Confused, Alara took it. Inside, to her shock, was a thick bundle of cash. Her chest tightened. It was more than a month's salary, maybe more than she had ever held at once. The man smiled casually. Just keep it. Consider it a gift. No one will know. For a moment, Alara's mind raced. She thought of her mother's medicines, her siblings' needs, the rent that was long overdue. Temptation whispered to her heart. But then she remembered Cale's piercing eyes, his words, "Then prove yourself." Her grip on the envelope tightened. She took a deep breath, then marched straight toward the elevator, ignoring the man's smirk. She went directly to the top floor. Inside Cale's grand office, she placed the envelope firmly on his desk. "I don't know what kind of game this is," she said, her voice steady though her heart was pounding. "But if you're testing me with money, I don't want it. I'm here to work, not to take bribes." Cale leaned back in his chair, surprise flickering in his eyes. He hadn't expected her to confront him so directly. For a long moment he said nothing, only studied her. Finally, the corner of his mouth lifted in the faintest smile. "Good," he murmured. "You passed." Alara blinked. "You mean, this was you?" He nodded. "I had to know if your honesty was as real as it seemed. Most people would have walked away with it. But you—" His gaze softened, admiration creeping in. "You brought it back." Her chest rose and fell with a mix of relief and indignation. "I told you I don't take charity. I want to earn my place." Cale leaned forward, his eyes holding hers with an intensity that made her breath catch. "Then earn it, Alara, and I'll be watching." As she turned to leave, her steps trembling yet firm, Cale's heart stirred with something unfamiliar. For years, people had surrounded him for his wealth, his power, his name. But Alara, she was different. And for the first time, Cale wondered if this difference might be exactly what he had been searching for all along. Weeks turned into months, and Alara quickly became a name whispered with respect in the vast halls of Arclight Enterprises. She was not the most educated, not the most polished, but her diligence outshined everyone. She arrived early, stayed late, and never complained, even when given the hardest tasks. She handled schedules, assisted executives, and slowly began learning the rhythm of the corporate world. While others sometimes gossiped, cut corners, or competed ruthlessly, Alara quietly focused on her work. And in a world driven by ambition, her honesty made her stand out like a rare gem. But Cale wasn't done testing her. One evening, after a particularly long day, Alara found a brown envelope on her desk. It wasn't addressed to anyone. She opened it cautiously and froze. Inside was a company check with her name on it. The amount, equal to 6 months' salary. Attached was a small note. "No one will ever know." Her hands trembled. Her family still struggled. Her siblings needed school fees. Her mother's medicines were growing more expensive. The temptation clawed at her heart. Just one decision could change her family's life. But then, she remembered Cale's eyes, his words, his silent watchfulness. And more than that, she remembered herself. The girl who promised never to lose her integrity, no matter how poor. She walked straight to Cale's office. He was still there, working late as usual. Without hesitation, she placed the check on his desk. Cale looked up, raising a brow. "You didn't even hesitate?" "I did," Alara admitted honestly, "because I'm human. But my conscience is worth more than any number on a check." For a moment, Cale was silent. Then he leaned back in his chair, his lips curling into a rare, genuine smile. "Good." His voice was softer this time, almost proud. "You passed again." Alara narrowed her eyes slightly. "So this was another test?" "Yes," Cale admitted. "And I won't apologize for it. I had to know if your integrity would break under greater weight. Most people fail when money grows larger." Her jaw tightened, but she didn't back down. Mr. Kale, if you truly want me here, then stop treating me like a suspect. Let me prove myself by my work, not by resisting your traps. Kale froze for a moment. No one had ever spoken to him like that. Not in the boardroom, not in his personal life. People bowed, agreed, obeyed. But this young woman, with her plain clothes and steady gaze, stood before him fearlessly. His heart stirred with something he didn't want to name. The next day he did something no one expected. He promoted her. From a junior assistant, Alara became an operations coordinator, handling a small team. The other employees were shocked. Many whispered that she must have connections with the CEO, but Alara silenced every rumor by proving herself daily. She worked harder, smarter, and always treated her team with kindness. One afternoon, while Alara was guiding her team through a complicated client file, Kale passed by quietly. He didn't enter, just stood at a distance, watching. His sharp eyes softened as he saw her leaning over a desk, patiently explaining details to a younger intern. Her tone warm and encouraging. Madame Massold's words echoed in his mind. This child. She still knows the value of a heart. Kale had spent his life surrounded by sharks, people who measured worth in numbers and contracts. But here was Alara, proving that compassion and integrity could succeed in a world of steel and glass. Yet Kale wasn't only watching her for admiration. He was watching because something deeper was forming in his own heart, something he hadn't allowed himself to feel for years. And Alara, though she didn't realize it yet, every test, every long day, every small smile exchanged across a hallway was slowly weaving her destiny closer and closer to his. Months had passed. Alara had grown into her new role with quiet confidence. She wasn't just another employee anymore. People looked up to her. She had earned respect, not through shortcuts, not through connections, but through sheer dedication. Kale had watched every step, from the shadows of his glass office, from unspoken tests he placed before her. He had studied her as carefully as he would study an investment. And each time she had chosen honesty. But Kale wasn't satisfied yet. His wealth had shown him the darkest sides of human nature. He had seen loyalty bought and love faked. Could anyone truly be incorruptible? One evening, after most of the employees had left, Kale called Alara into his office. The city lights glowed behind him through the tall windows, his figure framed against the skyline. "Sit," he said simply. Alara obeyed, though her heart beat faster under his intense gaze. She wondered if she had made a mistake in her work, but his expression gave nothing away. Kale opened a sleek black folder on his desk and slid it toward her. "Inside is a promotion letter. If you sign it, you'll become one of the youngest department heads in this company's history. With it comes power, a private office, and a salary beyond what you've ever imagined." Alara's breath caught. Slowly, she opened the folder. The letter was real. Her name was printed in bold letters. It was everything she could have hoped for. But then she noticed something else. An envelope tucked underneath. Curious, she pulled it out and opened it. Her eyes widened. Inside was not just her new salary contract, but stacks of crisp bills. More money than she had ever seen in her life. Her voice trembled. "Mr. Kale, what is this?" His gaze didn't waver. "It's simple. Take both the money and the position, and all I ask in return is your loyalty. No questions, no doubts. Loyalty to me, above everything else." The silence in the room grew heavy. Alara's chest rose and fell rapidly. For a fleeting second, she thought of her family, their poverty, her mother's medicines, her siblings' education. This one choice could secure their future forever. Kale leaned forward, his eyes sharp, searching her soul. "Everyone has a price, Alara. What's yours?" Her fingers trembled as she set the envelope down. She met his gaze, her voice steady though her heart pounded. My loyalty isn't for sale. Not to you. Not to anyone. If I take this promotion, it will be because I've earned it, not because I was bought. For the first time, Cale's carefully built walls cracked. His lips parted slightly, and something flickered in his eyes. Shock, respect, and something deeper, something unspoken. He rose from his chair and walked to the window, his back to her. For years, he had tested people, always proven right, that everyone could be tempted, everyone would bend. But Alara, she stood like a pillar, refusing to break. When he finally turned, his voice was low, almost reverent. Do you know what you've done, Alara? She frowned. I refused what wasn't mine. No, he whispered, stepping closer. You've done something no one else ever has. You've proven that your integrity is stronger than money, stronger than power. For a long moment, the silence between them wasn't heavy anymore. It was charged, alive, like electricity sparking in the air. Cale's eyes softened, no longer the eyes of a ruthless CEO, but of a man seeing someone who could change his world. And in that moment, Alara felt it too, though she didn't want to admit it. Something was shifting between them, something neither of them could deny much longer. Arya couldn't believe how much her life had changed in a matter of months. From struggling paycheck to paycheck, unsure how she'd keep her little apartment, to standing in the center of a mansion that now felt like home. Eleanor's health had improved drastically. With proper care, regular medical support, and Arya's gentle touch, she regained a strength even her doctors had doubted. The elderly woman adored Arya, calling her the daughter I never had. One morning, Eleanor insisted on taking a walk in the garden. Arya supported her slowly, step by step, until they reached a bench beneath the flowering magnolia tree. There, Eleanor squeezed her hand and whispered, Arya, you didn't just heal me, you healed my son too. For years, Adrian lived behind walls of money and pressure. But since you came, I see him smiling again, like the boy he once was. Arya blinked back tears. She glanced toward the tall figure standing not too far away, Adrian, watching them with a rare softness in his eyes. The hardened CEO who once spoke in clipped sentences now lingered at home, sharing meals, laughing in the kitchen, and helping his mother tend to flowers. That evening, as the sun painted the sky gold, Adrian finally spoke his heart. Arya, he said, his voice quiet but sure, I brought you here to care for my mother, but somewhere along the way, you cared for me too. I've spent years building empires, chasing numbers, but you reminded me that the smallest acts of kindness are worth more than all of it. I don't want you to struggle alone anymore. I want you by my side, always. Arya's heart raced. She thought of the girl she once was, the weary caregiver who counted coins at the grocery store, afraid of what tomorrow might bring. And now this man, a billionaire who had the world at his fingertips, was asking not out of charity, but with genuine love in his eyes. She smiled through tears. I never needed riches, Adrian. Just a place where I belonged. And with you, and with Eleanor, I think I found it. Months later, the mansion was filled not just with wealth, but with warmth. Arya continued to care for Eleanor, but now as family, not an employee. And whenever she passed through the grand halls, Adrian would often pause his business calls just to watch her, silently grateful that fate had brought her into their lives. Because in the end, it wasn't wealth that changed everything. It was kindness. It was love. And it was the courage of a struggling caregiver who chose compassion, even when no one was watching. Sparkles the end.